Howdy, howdy, folks. Howdy, 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 folks. Doot 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 doot. Howdy, 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 howdy. All right, Andy. All right, I got a hot one. I got a hot one for you today. All right, this one's gonna be red hot. All right, I call this Maiden. All right, her real name is Silky Clean, like Silky Clean. This young lady is the son of a maid and a local fairy lord who operates as a liaison between the Seelie and the human world. He was born of an inappropriate relationship where he basically cheated on his wife. Then the maid bore a daughter who would obtain the fracture of his fairy power in her human genes, which to the lord was, being an old hat in the fairy world, hated and mistreated her due to her being a inferior half-blood. A prejudice that her later teacher Indamati was familiar with among the fairy elites herself and her dealings with them herself. Silky also had a slave press placed on her at a young age that would force her to go into compliance and obedience to orders, though she could defy it in small ways, nor if an order wasn't directly given, or she could cleverly interpret it one way or another. Yeah, you know how actual magic like that actually works. When she came to the Big League Association, she was simply meant to support and serve the Lord's son, who was a top-ranked student in the school. Not to mention son's family, had given a significant amount of money to the school and had real influence. Uh-oh, that's not good. Anamati, after seeing the seal and that she wanted to show off a superpower, but was for. All right, now. Anamati, after seeing, she had the seal and she wanted to show off a superpower, but was forbidden from doing so, used her own fairy trickery to trick the Lord's son who was then the wiser, to allow her to demonstrate, to allow Maiden to demonstrate her abilities. When he learned, hold on, stop getting tongue-tied, please. When he learned Indamati was a Class 12B teacher, which is like the loser class for people with loser powers, he agreed to it, thinking it wouldn't matter either way because she would still be subservient to him and wouldn't have much of a future in the class anyway, to it being a sidekick support class, what she was sure would mean that she would end up supporting him anyway. So Silky demonstrated her powers, which due to the inhibiting nature of the slave seal that was on her didn't come out very strong, and she could only do basic maid magic arts, and that barely hit their mark. Hi Yenny, thank you for being here. And thank you for thank you for saying that. Oh no, Rosalind. All right now. So the teacher is thinking she was weak and not very strong due to not very strong, and due to the deal with the deal that the son's noble made with Endamati, decided to allow her to go to Class 12B. Later, when Pyrotechna pulled a prank on Indamati and Indamati doused the flames with water, Silky tried to clean it up. She noticed that Silky was a bit overly apologetic and always expecting harsh treatment and a bit of a people pleaser, so Indamati stopped her and told her she didn't have to clean it up if she didn't want to, which gave her a bit of freedom to choose for herself. All right now, hold on, please stop getting tongue-tied, please. When the dream space training began, Indamati discovered she had a slave crest put on her. Yeah, well, she already knew about that. And so Indamati, decided to use her extensive knowledge of white magic to remove it, which restored Silky's senses and free will, and meant that she no longer had to comply with anyone's orders, as well as, allowing her chores to finally show her true potential, which allowed her to do everything from cleaning magic, as well as, arts involving, soap, water, and dusting, as well as tea time arts, which allowed her to command and manipulate tea. And which also allowed her to develop her fairy traits such as hypnosis, though Indamati urged her not to use it unless she needed to. You gotta teach people how to use powers ethically, even if they're stuff like that. Her powers even allowed her to full-on manipulate multiple objects at once using the Silky's poltergeist arts, as well as spatial and cleaning supply manipulation based on different aspects of a maid's duties and various jobs that they could perform, which Indamati, being familiar with the Silky arts herself, due to being trained by, Titania herself in them, helped her to learn and grow and develop into a powerful true artist, and to use the force of imagination to make her own. She learned powerful and deadly abilities such as being able to wash anyone as though they were clothes. However, the Lord's son was upset that, Indamati, that Inamati, removed the slave seal, and, Silky didn't have to follow his orders or serve and obey him anymore, and discovered that, the crest had been removed, so he tried to raise a big stink among the school staff about this issue. However, the school staff was forced to, at least publicly, to side with Inamati, as slavery is illegal in the human world, and has been for a long time. And the Lord's son was reminded it could potentially become a political firestorm if he and his old man were discovered to be practicing slavery. So the Lord's son was forced to cope, mold, and seethe about this issue. But he still held great resentment towards Inamati in Class 12B because of this, and often tried to cause trouble for them. Later in the tournament, he, thanks to his old man, got a bunch of expensive, powerful gear together to boost those abilities, and found himself fighting against Silky, now calling herself Maiden and having developed a more sassy and confident personality, thinking he could easily beat her as a show of force, tried to manipulate her, but she quickly showed off what her true arts could truly do, and managed to defeat him soundly in the tournament's quarterfinals, which, led to her, winning second place in the tournament, which she was very proud and happy of, and felt that she now had a future, felt that now her future was spotless and pristine and perfect like a well-maintained home. She would even go on to later command an army of Silkies under her that would help strengthen her abilities far greater than before, and become a major player in defeating the Dark Pollutants and their later Contagion during the Elemental World arc. Ooh. By the way, thank you for being here, Yenny. Now the reason I came up with this girl is because, I came up with a character, I was, playing around with, Silkies, which were a type of maid that was basically like a fairy. Yeah. and I was like, what if, we had maid magic arts? Yeah. I first thought about, cleaning and all that, and then I settled on maid, and, which could include all those things. and this is what I came up with because of it. So what do you think about it? Alright, now. And let's go look for somebody to raid right now. Alright, now. Let's go raid. Okay, yay. Raid. Come on, speed up. Come on, speed up. Come on, step it up. Oh, I know just who to raid. Raid Eerie Echo Hounds. Alright, let's go raid them, yeah. Alright, now. Face down. We're not kidding around. What's that sound? Your pride hitting the ground. Yeah, she's a half fairy like me. Yeah. Silky Cleaner's a half fairy like me. Yeah. Yeah. I know what, people are like when, I know what, the old hats in Fairyland are like when, you mention your half fairy. Moonbat raid. See you later. Goodbye.